Hello and welcome back to the channel. To be able to prosper in your next level of responsibility, you may need one or more of these: a skills upgrade, a competency upgrade, or a character upgrade. In our last video, we were reflecting on the ideas of James Lawrence on why leaders fail. We explored two of these: burnout, where leaders collapse under the stress of overload, and dropout, where they lose vision and focus. We use the image of fifth columnists to identify factors at work in our personal lives and wider environment that can contribute to these negative effects. The burnout crew, who want you to burn out, and the distraction burglars, who want you to drop out. Now let's turn to the third of James' fifth columnists, the Underminers, who want you to fall out. The effect of the work of this particular fifth column is that you are unable to fulfill your potential and ambition because of the negative consequences of your character. And the reason we call them underminers is that, as far as you're concerned, their activity is invisible. They are at work under the surface of your self-perception. In the context in which James is primarily writing Christian leadership, he's mainly concerned with what we could describe as moral failings, an issue or challenge for anyone in any kind of public life. And whilst explorations of the interplay between morality and character are important, they're beyond the scope of this video, and even without that interplay, there's much of value that we can learn from James's insights. So let's find a question to be our guide as we reflect further. Try this. What aspects of your character could be undermining your potential for success and fulfillment? Or to put it another way, how good are your drains? I once heard a story about a brand new state-of-the-art school building. The architect won an award for the design. It was built using the most ecologically friendly materials on offer. It was kitted out with the best educational equipment available, and as it was being built was creating a huge amount of excitement for its potential as an educational establishment, both for its immediate and wider communities. But there was a problem. Before the school was due to open, a final building inspection revealed a defect with the drains. The land on which the school was built was mainly clay, and as the school was constructed, the weight of the building gradually became too great for the foundations to sustain it. The drains sank into the clay. Any building, once in use, generates a certain amount of waste. We accept this as a fact of the world we live in, and we create infrastructure to deal with it. But in the case of this school, once the weight of the drains were being asked to carry reached a certain level, they became unable to cope. We were left looking at what on one level was a beautiful, impressive and inspiring building, but which was, because of the structural issues under the surface, nothing more than a white elephant, now totally unfit for purpose. Perhaps you can see where I'm going with this. Whilst it's important to build on our strengths, we just have to accept that most of us, at any rate, produce a certain level of waste in our lives. And by waste, I mean the behaviours that make us difficult to live with or to work with, because they're unattractive, unproductive, and if they get really bad, frankly toxic. We sometimes talk about taking on responsibility in terms of carrying a greater weight. And like our school building, the greater the weight we carry, the greater the demands it places on our character, the positive aspects that people admire, and our capacity to produce the opposite, which in character terms tests the quality of our drains. So what could this mean in practice? Here's a couple of examples. Frida has a reputation for being decisive. In her career to date, she's achieved a great deal by getting straight to the point, seeing what needs to be done, and letting people know very clearly what's expected of them. Frida has progressed in her career in a fairly structured environment in which people were used to being directed and who considered what might be described as brusque or direct communication as something that just went with the territory. Now Frida is taking on a new and more senior role. she's finding that her colleagues and direct reports are less responsive to her direct style. But since this is what has brought her success to date, she reckons that emphasising this aspect of her character even more is what she needs to do in order to be successful at this next level of responsibility. If people are having a problem with Frida, well, as far as she's concerned, that's their problem. So what if they're saying they don't want to work with her and would never work with her again? And then there's Freddie. Freddie considers himself to be an empowering manager. Success to date in his career has been through allowing his direct reports as much freedom as possible in making decisions and taking responsibility for themselves. Now Freddie's taking himself a new level of responsibility, which involves more complex interactions between various strands of work. And people are asking Freddie to adjudicate between different priorities and to set clearer direction. Well, yes, Freddie tells himself he is quite capable of drawing on his experience and his analytical skills to make those judgment calls. But won't that lead to some people feeling put out, disregarded and disempowered? No, says Freddie, best leave his team to work this out between themselves, and if issues are being left unresolved, and some people seem to be getting frustrated as a result, well, it'll all sort itself out, eventually. After all, this is the approach that has brought him success to date. Maybe you've worked with some Fridas and Freddies. I certainly have. The problem they have in common is a singular inability to make the connection between what's happening around them and their own part in the effective process. They can see their history and they can see their past successes, but they haven't recognised that whatever positive energy is generated by their behaviour, they are also producing waste. And if they don't develop the character to deal with it, to minimise its impact and sluice it away, it will just accumulate to the point that colleagues will feel the need to create a safe distance from the bad vapours that it produces. If we really wanted to, we could probably identify character weaknesses in just about everyone we know. Most of these will be minor, and they won't have any particularly negative consequence on how we relate to each other. But we need to recognise that new levels of responsibility bring our characters into sharper focus. And to succeed, we need to ensure that whatever weight of responsibility we take on, this can be supported by the strength of our character. To that end, the challenge is to invest further in our strengths whilst addressing the impact of our weaknesses. Chris Lowney, a former director at JP Morgan, wrote this in his book Heroic Leadership. Leaders thrive by understanding who they are and what they value, by becoming aware of unhealthy blind spots or weaknesses that can derail them, and by cultivating the habit of continuous self-reflection and learning. One of the most tragic things I've seen is people who fall out of leadership because they fall victim to the undermining fifth column of their own character weaknesses that they lack the self-awareness or the courage to address. And the good news is that's not a club you need to join. Just as you can upgrade your skills and competencies through effective training, mentoring and hard work, so also through courage, discipline and working with someone who chooses to believe in you, you can also upgrade your character. It's quite likely this will be one of the hardest tasks to which you'll ever apply yourself. But if you're serious about taking on the new levels of responsibility to which you aspire, addressing or not addressing these questions may be the difference between collapsing under the weight of your own weaknesses or thriving by protecting and building further on your success. What aspects of your character could be undermining your potential for success and fulfillment? Be brave. Set yourself the goal of finding a workplace mentor or an independent coach to work with you to enhance your skills, develop your competencies, and to make the necessary investment in your character as you take on the weight of the new responsibilities coming your way.